This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Opening half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Look, we have a lot of insurance needs, right? In fact, the guy in the corner office probably has more than anybody. A lot of them are accident insurance. What? Jeez, Todd, I'm trying to personalize the commercial. Purdy Insurance handles it all. They'll organize all your insurance needs. They'll make sure you're fully insured. They'll update policies where needed. Oh, and by the way, because customer service means everything to them, it means everything to them. They'll do everything they can to save you money. They're the best. Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. All right, another day and another pirate story. Where do we...
I feel like this one's the worst of them all.
Okay. Right, so let's start with this. What do I always say, and what have I been telling my class over and over again? And yes, it's something that Joe said all the time, but it's true. That's why I use it all the time. Okay? Take care of what?
The little things and the big things take care of themselves.
Exactly. So you don't go from point A to Z without taking the other 24 steps in the middle. For the suit, there are 26 letters. What? I was just trying to help. What? So you don't go from point A to point Z without also taking the other 24 steps in the middle before you get there. This is an organization, like any organization. The people that are doing this have nothing to do with the product in the field. Zero. So let's take the product on the field off the table for the moment. Because that's Ben Sherrington's job. That's the approval of Bob Nutting and so forth. But these are, okay, so you control the controllables. So what are we controlling the controllables? Communication is a controllable. So let's get to the Bucko Brick story, okay? KDKA TV in Pittsburgh, the Bucko Bricks initially put out there in 1999, and they sold about 10,000 of them, that's great. Just like you see outside of the plaza now on the south side of Beaver Stadium. I don't know if you've seen it, Todd, but the brick area there, right? And Kathy and I bought a brick, okay? And it's in there. It's very simple. It just says, Kathy and Steve Jones, we are, right? Very simple, but it was just part of buying a brick there. And we got a replica of it. I have it here in the office, as a matter of fact. One of these days, I'll have to get to the office. I think you'd like this. So it's pretty good. Just got to get the phone part straightened out. It's like one last step I got to get to the phone part. Suit said hit it on the side. He worries me. All right, but the bricks, back to the bricks. So they sold 10,000 of these in 1999. Now, what happens over time? Okay, this is even as simple as being on campus. There's a lot of areas on the Penn State campus now that are brick because it's aesthetically beautiful to do it. But one of the problems with bricks is that they'll start getting a little uneven. They'll start to wear over time. You know what I mean? So things start to happen because, you're talking about bricks are one piece at a time, and that's how it's done it. Okay? And so, of course, they're going to have to be replaced. That is no issue here. Okay? So they tear the bricks out, and KDKA has a picture of the bricks at a transfer station about ready to be dumped because they were removed as part of the renovations being done outside the stadium. Now, they wanted the display to be open on April 4th. Of course, it wasn't. And this is exactly correct. There's no issue here. Through the years, a host of environmental factors, including weather and foot traffic, have led to a significant damage leading to multiple full-scale replacements. Exactly. That makes complete sense. This cycle of deterioration prompted our organization to look for a better way to preserve these cherished messages over the long term. That makes sense. Except they didn't tell anybody about it. What is wrong with you? Okay? What's wrong with you? All you need to do is let all these people know you're doing the project. Because in all likelihood, the vast majority paid with credit cards, right? Which means they are on file. And you just need to do the best you can. You're not going to get a hold of every single person. Because, some people may have passed away. Some people may not be aware the family member got the brick. They may have moved. I mean, whatever. But you do the best you can to contact every single person and say, hey, just so you know, we're going to take the bricks out. If you would like your current brick that's going to be thrown out, we're going to offer it to you. And by the way, to help with the new plaza, it'll be, if you would like that brick, it'll be $50, but you're still going to get, no matter what, in whatever plaza we set up. I think they want to set up a wall now, right? You're just going to be moved over. We just want to make sure you know and that you have the option, if you'd like to have the current brick, and then for a I'm picking a round number, a $50 fee, we'll send you the brick, the whole thing. It'll help fund the new plaza, which would be great. And, and we'll make sure no matter what you do one way or the other, the brick you bought in 1999, that's still good for this new plaza. That's all you have to do. How difficult is that? Why do you have a staff? This is something you give to your staff. Okay, here is the list of all the people that have donated to the brick. Get a hold of as many people as you can. Work the phones, work the emails. Try and find them. Let them know what we're doing, why we're doing it, because we appreciate them. You have to appreciate your customers. They say they've replaced them twice since the introduction. That's great. But they botched it again. Like, what are they doing in the off season? There are no games being played. And you want to know what the irony of all this? Guess where the proceeds for the bricks went to? Oh, come on, Todd.
A Roberto Clemente charity fund.
Yes, it did. The Roberto Clemente Foundation. What a week. Paul Skeens picked a bad week to get bombed on his first start. Yikes.
If they had a meeting in the offseason and the subject was, how can we alienate our fans more? Could they have done a better job?
Exactly. But look, if I'm Bob Nutting, okay, don't get mad at me. I'm not Bob Nutting. If I'm Bob Nutting, you know what I'm doing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock? Which I would have done today. But I'm having a mandatory staff meeting. Mandatory. And I get up in front of everybody and I say, look, let's start with this. We've had a bad week. Nobody is going to be fired over the bad week. But, we can't tolerate it. Okay? and I would give them, take care of the little things, big things take care of themselves. You didn't take care of the little things. You didn't. You didn't check all the boxes. You just did it. You jumped to Z from A. Right? And thought and didn't think about that. Our fans are precious to us. You are one of the primary links to the fans. So you're going to replace the bricks? Replacing the bricks is perfectly acceptable because they've actually done it 2 other times. They've actually done it 2 other times. But you need to communicate with these people that already gave their money to have the brick put there. And we should have offered them the ability to keep the weather-worn brick or whatever just as a keepsake and as a thank you from us to them for being a part of this, while then assuring them they're going to be a part. I think they're going to do it on a wall now because that way there'll be less wear. And I think it's going to be near the Mazeroski statue or something like that. I said, we need to talk to all these people. So we need to be the organization that goes out of our way to treat our customers like gold. I said, and we skipped steps. You can't skip any steps. And the next one in here that skips steps will be the one that is no longer working here. So I'm not going to fire anybody now because I want to give everybody a chance to do this thing right. But we have to do this thing right every day. We have to know our customers. I mean, that's what if I'm nutting, that's what I would tell them. In other words, I'm not going to fire anybody now. That way everybody in the room can breathe a sigh of relief. Okay. But now I'm going to challenge you to do the job better and to do it right and to skip no steps.
And I wonder if most of that is not, when you say knowing your fan base, is not realizing what those bricks meant to individuals. I think I saw John Parado yesterday, was upset because, he bought one for his dad back in 1999.
Yeah.
Another beat writer, his dad bought him one and surprised him with it in 1999. So that's
right.
I mean, they're personal to people, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just, obviously you know this, but it's not just the brick. I mean, it was a present. It was a memorandum of somebody that was a Pirates fan, and I think they didn't even realize. I bet they didn't even realize what was on the bricks, let alone that they meant so much to people.
My Aunt Jackie and my Uncle Dave. Okay, and my Aunt Jackie would be my mother's sister, be my mother's younger sister. And I think for Kevin, for his birthday one year, and I can't remember which birthday it would be, because Kevin's a diehard Yankees fan, right?
And I liked him.
Right. They bought him a Red Sox brick. I think that's what they did. I don't know where it is. It's outside film. I have no idea where it is. Right? I think they did that. So he started getting all this correspondence from the Red Sox. Hey, buddy, great to have you on the team. The whole, you know what I mean? He's like, I got Red Sox mail all the time, and he hates them. But it's just, hey, if there's any organization, again, control the controllables. Well, this is something you have complete control over. And you just went and did it and acted, quote, acted as if you didn't care you did it. Now, maybe because when they did it the other 2 times, when they replaced the bricks, there was no reaction to it. How about that? And I don't know how they handled it then. I don't know. Maybe they handled it right the last time. I have no idea. But, now this happens on top of the Clemente thing, and you sit there and go, you got to be kidding me. Who's on your staff there? Do you have, literally, and I do mean this, do you have enough adults in the room? Or do you have a lot of mid-level, lower-level people that are 22 to 30 years old that just don't think about these things?
And let's be honest, might not know.
Well, with the Clemente thing, they may not have known. Again, that's why you need one of the elements. When I talk to the students in class, and it's always like early on because I talk about getting their first job. And I said, that's the goal of this class, to get you a job. I said, whatever we can do to help, we want to help get you a job. I mean, why bother going to college if the goal isn't to get a job? I mean, really. And I tell them, you're going to go someplace, in all likelihood, where they don't have the same interests you do. The interests of the Dallas, Fort Worth market are different than the San Antonio market, and they're both in the same state. You have to, I said, you'll have to learn the market, what makes it tick, what makes the fans interested. And you're going to have to check your own personal interests at the door. You may be a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan, and your first job is Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Well, exactly how often are you going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles in Baton Rouge, Louisiana?
Except Super Bowl week.
Or when the Saints play the Eagles. Right?
Pretty much.
Right. Okay, guess what? The rest of the time you've got to talk about LSU, football, softball, basketball, baseball. All right? Women's gymnastics, Saints football, Hornets. Well, that's what you have to talk about. That's your job. Your job is not, even though you may be the biggest diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan, grew up loving the whole thing, you can't sit there and talk about the Eagles on your sportscast. You can't sit there and talk about the Eagles on your sports talk show. Unless, of course, like they're playing, the playoffs, or in the playoffs, you're picking games, things like that. Yeah. But in general, on an everyday basis, and the show's 365. Right? I mean, you're what, a diehard Mets fan, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say there'd be a lot more Seahawks content in the Daily Item if it was up to me.
Right. Seahawks, Mets, the whole thing. What do we talk about? The Eagles, okay? We talk about the Phillies, right? We'll talk about the Pirates because they're in the same state, and there's some Pirate fans because, remember, AT&T Sports is on the cable in the eastern part of the state, too. Okay? And that's what you talk about. And so now let's get back to the Pirates. You take a job with the Pirates. I don't care what age you happen to be. I don't care if you're as young as Hannah Mears, who's the on-field reporter now for them. Hannah was one of the students in my class. Okay? I don't care whether you're Greg Brown, that's been there, and take your lead from Greg. He knows everything about the organization. Everything. He's immersed in it. Greg Brown is immersed in it. Greg Brown is a pro's pro. Right? Hannah is really good at what she does. But it's your job, okay? I got a job with the Pirates doing pick whatever job. You've got to throw your heart and soul into that thing. All right, you know what I got to know? I got to find out everything I can about the Pittsburgh area. I got to find out everything about what makes the Pirate fan tick, what they do, what they love at the ballpark, what they don't love. Right? Management by walking around. Find out. Okay. May not have been the biggest Pirate fan go, but I heard of Roberto Clemente. I know he's a big deal, but, wow. Let me read up on him. That's easy. They created this thing called Google. What makes, why was Willie Stargell so important? Why is Bill Mazeroski so important to the history of the club? All right. So when something comes up, I don't care whether you're in sales or whatever, something comes up. Is it called Surfside?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Okay. Surfside, by the way, has zero to do with this. It just turns out it was their banner. Right? It's not their fault, not even remotely. They're the ones that bought it and invested in the Pirates.
Somebody said you want some right field signage, and they said, sign us up.
sign us up. Sounds good. Right? They didn't know they were replacing that. Right? But the person selling it did. Right? What's wrong with you? That's not how the city and the and the fan base ticks. Last I checked, there's space out there. Okay, there's space out in the wall. And same thing with this. This is a communication issue. I mean, they're going to replace the bricks. They've done it before. But just tell everybody you're doing it. Oh, and by the way, offer them the ability, it may be worn and whatever, but hey, look, hey, as a goodwill gesture, we'd like to send you your brick. Hey, you know what? It's like, and look, there's some shipping and handling involved and so forth. Hey, $50. We'll take some of the extra money and we're going to put it into the plaza if that's okay with you. Well, what's wrong with doing that? All you have to do is take the moment to find the people. I know there's 10,000 of them, but why the heck do you have a staff? That's the job of the staff.
And that's way better than somebody doing a story about it and then having to go find them piled up in a recycling center somewhere.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the issue with of all the things with this. That's the issue with this. The issue is you didn't take the time to do it right. And again, the end result's I'm sure the end result's going to be beautiful. I have no problem with that. But that's step Z. When everybody goes over and goes, wow, look at that. You unfortunately skipped all the other steps when you said, let's replace it at A. And didn't do steps B through Y.
At Sunbury Motors, we're not just from America, we're for America. That's why we're proud to announce our employee pricing program with incredible savings on 255 new eligible Fords. Right now, save up to $6,797 on 25 2025 Ford Explorers, starting at under $40,000. Save up to $2,665 on 16 2025 Ford Mavericks, starting just under $28,000. And for those who need strength and power, save up to $10,541 on 60 2025 Ford F-150s, starting at under $48,000. These are more than vehicles. They represent American craftsmanship, strength, and pride. At Sunbury Motors, we're proud to be American-made, American-owned, and dedicated to helping you drive through 2025 with confidence. Sunbury Motors, American-made, American-owned, and coming alive in 2025.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
An in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And great to be with you on the show today. This half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15. Hummels Wharf online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. All with great warranties, great safety features. Really amazing in a lot of ways. Terrific pre-owned inventory, and they go over each one with a fine-tooth comb. It's the Sunbury Motors guarantee. It eases the buying experience. And a great service department. Whether it happens to be inspections, quick lane, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Any opportunity to get to spend with Mark Wogenrich is always a slice of gold. Sir, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Dave. It was great seeing you. It's been, I don't know, maybe a month ago or so, a little while ago at
Lou
Prado's service and a little get-together afterward. That was great, catching up with everybody, telling stories about Lou. He was such a unique figure and so welcoming to all of us who've been around. I just always love talking to him about Penn State, sports history, football history. I just kind of wanted to make sure to get that up to the top, just to, hi, Lou, and thanks for everything.
I mean, very, very special guy who understood what we do and also understood it on the history end of it as well. And he was... My favorite was when he kept asking Rich for the password to get into the Red Eagle.
That was great.
Rich, I forgot it. I don't need a password. It's like, and then Rich is like, it is a paywall for a reason. All right, so okay. I want to start with, it was just a marvelous story you did with Joe Battista with the Frozen Four coming up. And I'll relate something quickly, and I'll get to it. I remember it was after the Penn State LSU Citrus Bowl, and I had to go. I flew commercially, so the next day I'm at the airport, and I'm going to go to wherever next for basketball, whether it was Michigan, Michigan State, something like that. And I see Joe Battista in line, and this is what, January 2010, and he says to me, he says, "Steve, I've got a donor." Right, you do? He says, "Yeah. Terry and Kim Pagula," and he's going through the whole thing. Now, as you and I both know, it took a little longer to get this thing going. When you talked to him, what was the, quote, agonizing process for him to get the facility and the endowment of the program we see today?
It took 5 years, I think, was probably that it took 5 years. Might have been the most agonizing thing, even though, I mean, for him, it was probably a 20-year process, coming from as the Icers coach, always wanting to, he's always wanted to bring Penn State into Division I hockey, and he just didn't have the building, didn't have the funding. There were Title IX issues, as he mentioned, and they didn't offer scholarships. So it felt like in talking to him, and I remember I had spoken years ago about this, but in talking to him again last week about this, and he was so gracious and just so funny and entertaining and just illuminating about the history, is how it started in 2005 and then it took 5 years. Part of that is just negotiations take a while when you're giving a lot of money. But then there was the financial crisis of 2008, and that delayed things. And and then they kept putting together the whole package and what was it going to entail. 2 teams, the arena, what the arena was going to look like, how much money they would need. They had to go back to him to get more money after the fact, and that that ultimately proved to be okay. And I felt like he just had the temperament for it because it took so long, that he had a sense of patience about him, and he had this sense of that kind of a commitment. He wrote a book, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book. I can look at it real quick, but it has to do with persistence, about being persistent in what you do, and he had that, I think, probably that trait above anything through the whole thing. So when it finally happened, I think that that just unleashed a torrent of emotion, and then for this to go for it to take 15 years, there's a persistence on Penn State hockey's part too that began, I guess, with Joe Battista.
No question about that with him, because it meant a lot. I remember doing the Icers hockey show with him in the 80s into the early 90s. And it always was something he was trying to get going. And, Mark, let's be honest. With the revenue sharing coming up, there are not going to be any men's ice hockey programs added for a long time because you can't take on debt.
Yeah, exactly. You have to build an arena and fund scholarships. I mean, hockey's going to be a tough enough one, I think, for some places to be competitive in. You know, even in like the Big Ten, because you're looking at Big Ten schools that are going to fund football first and foremost. They're going to fund football and basketball, whereas a place, Penn State's going to play Boston University in the Frozen Four semifinals tomorrow night. Boston University, if they are going to, rev share, they're going to rev share probably more into hockey. University of Denver, similarly, is going to rev share more into hockey. The other Frozen Four team, Western Michigan, the first-time team, maybe they look into hockey as a place where they can be more competitive. And it'll be interesting to see where Big Ten schools are going to come down on how much they're going to be able to share, how much revenue they're going to share with their hockey teams. That to me, you said it's not even. It's going to go beyond adding to the point where some of the Big Ten schools might even be. They might have to recalculate how much. How much conviction they have, how much financial conviction they have with their programs.
Right. Because, like I said, there's always this the talk about adding to the Big Ten. Could Illinois add? Could Indiana add? Mark, nobody's going to add. Nobody has the financial resources
They're going
to
to fund
do it.
basketball. Obviously football and basketball. When you're funding those two things, that's going to be 90% of your revenue right there, or your rev sharing right there.
Yeah.
Probably more. Right.
So in this journey, they finally get it. And I know that you only have X amount of lines you can put in. I remember the first thing that they talked about because of Title IX was Joe Batista's suggestion was women's rugby, because it would be a sport that had the scholarship numbers and probably the fewer financial resources needed compared to women's hockey. But they decided that in the end they added women's hockey because they felt they needed the balance of it. I don't know if he got into that or not.
No, he didn't. We didn't get. Didn't really get that deep into it. It was just more largely about the men's program, but it was vital to add. To your point, I think it was vital for them to add the women's hockey team. I think that was also important in part for the Pegulas too. I think I don't know how much of a condition they made, but it was important to them that it was going to round out an entire hockey program, that they were going to have an entire hockey ecosystem there.
What were the most painstaking hurdles? Where it's like, there are always going to be hurdles, but you eventually can work it out, and while you worry about it, okay. But there are others that were like, oh God, I don't know if we can do this or not. What were those?
I think it was money. It was the arena and the money. Until he got that call from Terry Pegula in 2005, I don't know if Joe ever really. I don't think until even that he thought it was going to be possible. They needed somebody who could write a big check. He went to Terry Pegula. When Terry Pegula called him in 2005, this is the story he told me about, that they went to Kelly's for dinner, and Joe went there with a number in mind. He said, we need $50 million, and he thought he was kind of, he didn't know how Terry Pegula was going to react to that. Would it be, that's not enough? Would it be, are you nuts? He really had no idea. But that was going to be that. I really think that was the block more than anything, because you need a building, and you need building, scholarships, all that. You just needed a big chunk of money, and crowdsourcing that wasn't going to really work, because how much money are you going to get from your former players? I mean, not to say the former players aren't successful. There's some very successful former Penn State hockey players in business out there. But were they going to be able to crowdfund 8 figures? And, I just feel like until he got to that, there was no Division I hockey. Everything else they were able to sort out. the arena, a league to play in, getting into the Big Ten, that sort of thing. Like we discussed, having the women's team, figuring out the Title IX issues, that was all negotiable. And I think even going back to the Pegulas and saying we need a little bit more money, and they got an additional $14 million after the first $88 million dollar donation, so bringing the whole thing to 102. I think they even felt a little bit, maybe a little bit awkward about that. So ultimately, and then then they build, they break ground during, it was after the scandal, after in 2011, they break ground on this arena, and they're going, what are we building into at this point? Those are all, I think, little side, maybe just, auxiliary concerns sort of thing. I think Joe even said he felt like maybe that this was going to be kind of a positive boost for athletic department morale in having this construction go on at that time during the period when there's a lot of just uncertainty about athletics, but also debt. I mean, just with the fine and things like that. So I just ultimately, once he got the donation, once they got that, I think everything else felt like we could work through pretty much anything at this point.
Yeah, because the timing of it, the two guys that walked over together and sat together at the groundbreaking were Bill O'Brien and I. So we were sitting together. It was like, okay. All right. Did you get to Allentown to see them play? Did you get over?
Yeah, I did. I got there on Sunday, and that was the first hockey game, Penn State hockey game that I'd seen in a while. What an unbelievably, really good atmosphere. I wasn't there Friday night because that was pro day. So I did get to see him Sunday, and I've seen Penn State wrestling at PPL Center, and they we'll say, when Penn State comes to PPL Center to wrestle against Lehigh, they'll put over 9,000 in that building, floor seats and things like that. But this crowd, it was really good because it went both ways, because UConn's really not that far from us anyway. It's about 3 hours. It's not a whole lot farther than State College. So there was a good UConn crowd there. But the action in that game, the speed of it surprised me. The action, the way the teams kind of traded runs. Penn State just jumped all over UConn early. UConn just threw shots at Arseny Sergeev in the third period and in overtime, and then the winning goal, Matt DiMarsico's winning goal, was a thing of beauty. And then the reaction. I didn't really realize how many former players actually kind of snuck their way onto the ice too. That there was a sense of history in that moment, and that it wasn't just the current players were celebrating, but there were guys who had played before who came to the game, and they kind of found their way onto the ice just to be a part of that. There was a lot. There was a generational kind of component to that too, that I think Guy Godowski really summarized well afterward in saying that this is about these guys on this team, but it's for the 15 years or so of players who had come before them.
Well, the first interview I did with Guy Godowski on the Coaches Show, so they're about to get this program going, and I said, let's just be frank, you're starting an expansion team. Right?
Yep.
And he looked at me and he went, wow. He said, I never really thought of it in those terms. He said, but you're exactly right. All these guys that came on the ice all set the foundation for what tomorrow night is. I don't think they're there without those guys.
No, and one of the things he brought up really interestingly about that is they recruited, initially they had to recruit kind of Penn State sports history. They had to recruit, we have this great new building, but Penn State sports really is, that's the foundation of what we're recruiting. We're really not recruiting on Penn State hockey history. Like you said, we're starting an expansion team. And he had players tell him, that's great. We love the place. This looks like a lot of fun. We'll go to football games and stuff like that. Dude, this is great, but I don't want to lose for 4 years. That's what some players actually told him, that they didn't want to go to college and lose, and that's what they felt like might happen, or what they were being told might happen. So he had to really recruit through a lot of that, too. So the guys who were there initially, they set. I think they even set more than a foundation. They set maybe just like they set a cultural bar of players who wanted to be here and who wanted to be part of a building process. I mean, it wasn't like the Knights, the Golden Knights in Las Vegas, where they just 2 years in they're in the Stanley Cup. That's not what he started with at all.
No, there was no expansion draft. All right, so football thoughts. Here they are. They're making the transition now into the second half of spring drills. Any football thoughts?
I think next week, to me, is going to be such a unique period. And when the transfer portal reopens and you're coaching through that just seems like such an antithetical idea to what spring practice is. It's a developmental spot that maybe, usually after spring practice, you might sit down with players and say, here's where you are, right? Here's where you are in your development. Here's where we think you are on the roster, on the depth chart, where you could go if you continue developing. And it's a conversation that you have that is promising, or maybe it's limiting. Say, we don't know how much much more you're going to develop. Maybe consider your options. Well, now starting a week from today, on April 16th, there's guys going to be coming to James Franklin and the position coaches saying, we think we know where we are, and we're going to enter the portal. We're going to start looking around, or agents are going to start shopping these guys to other places. There might be players who've had actually pretty good springs, but maybe still are limited on the depth chart and get shopped. That's just, to me, I'm really curious as to how that moves, how that kind of works its way through Penn State's roster. It's going to happen everywhere. And just, how it's going to happen, finishing spring practice, when you kind of run through this month and you're tired and you're on a sprint, and then all of a sudden you look around and somebody who's at practice this weekend might not be at the blue-white game. You discussed ad nauseum, I'm sure, here about the calendar. This is another spot on the calendar that I feel like is just really mistimed poorly.
I was about to say that. I don't, especially now, the semester is a natural. Okay, They're going to finish the semester anyway. Why doesn't this start and go 15 days when the semester is over? Even before, May 1 to May 15. What the heck is wrong with that?
Yeah, it's not like guys are going to not take finals.
Right. They have to stay eligible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's running this thing, Mark?
Yeah.
That's why
we'll find out.
That's why I give the judge a lot of credit.
The other question that he has now, and that goes on with the, what came out of the settlement negotiations this week is about the roster limits. Will that be in place? So I guess Penn State is probably, Franklin and his staff and the recruiting staff, everybody, roster management, they're looking at it. We need to be at 105 in August, or whatever that whatever the deadline might be. We don't even know that. But now, maybe if there is a change in the settlement language, maybe 105 is not in play for this year, and he doesn't even know that. So literally, if you're working toward we have to be at 105 players by August, then you are reshaping your roster this spring in that way. But if you don't know that, if you feel like you can add 10 or 15 players, maybe there's just guys who didn't get work because you thought they wouldn't be here. I don't know that to be the case, but that's just something simple like that. Like, how many players are we going to have on our roster when we play Nevada on August 30th? And to not even know that at this point, 4 months out, is, if James had hair to pull out.
Well, let me put it this way. Here's a quick note for you and for everybody. Some programs have already cut to 105.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. James has not. The walk-ons are still there. And what she said this week about grandfathering those players, which I thought was a slice of wisdom on her part, may play out very well for these players, because you know darn well if they want to get to a settlement on this thing, they will acquiesce to that. That I really believe they will. So,
and it makes complete sense. I mean, why have players who were on a roster be part of a cutoff, be part of a manufactured cutoff, who aren't really part, who might not get scholarships anyway, but they can still be part of a roster. What's the harm in that?
Exactly. There is no harm to it. That was her point. That's why if you grandfather it, then I don't know, 3-4 years in, then everybody is actually 105, because people will then, quote, graduate out of the program. I thought it was very smart.
At that point, maybe they're at 120. Maybe they're at 125 in 3 or 4 years too. Yeah.
That's fine. There's no issue with that, and they may change the rules on the roster limit too, for all we know.
Yeah.
Mark, it is always a pleasure. That was a great article, by the way. It really was.
Oh, thanks so much. I really appreciate that from you, Steve.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that was really cool. I liked it a lot. Hey, Mark, be good. We'll see each other soon, okay?
Yep, absolutely. See you then.
Mark Wogenrich, SI.com, does a great job covering Penn State. Always has. One of the outstanding beat writers that cover this program. All right, this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.